As I took care of his sick mother, he went on a trip with his mistress. My response left him stunned. The air in the Carter household hung heavy with the scent of lavender soap and liniment, a fragrance Emily had come to associate with duty. For 12 years, she had been the sole caretaker of Margaret, her bedridden mother-in-law, whose frail body demanded constant vigilance. Emily's hands, once soft and nimble, were now calloused from scrubbing sheets and massaging Margaret's withered legs. She turned her over in bed each night with a tenderness that masked her exhaustion, whispering soft reassurances to a woman who rarely responded. When Margaret passed quietly in her sleep, Emily stood by the empty bed, her chest loosening for the first time in over a decade. The silence was unfamiliar, almost sacred, but it carried a question she hadn't dared ask. What now? Michael's suggestion came like a burst of sunlight through storm clouds. A family road trip, he declared one evening, his voice warm with an enthusiasm Emily hadn't heard in years. She seized the idea with a fervor that surprised even herself, her heart thrumming with the promise of escape. The living room became a whirlwind of activity as she packed suitcases with military precision, Ethan's favorite snacks, Sophie's travel pillow, Michael's neatly folded shirts. She hummed old folk tunes, imagining the open road, the laughter, the stories they'd share. The night before departure, she barely slept, her mind painting vivid pictures of mountains and sunsets. By dawn, she stood at the front door, her worn sneakers scuffing the hardwood, ready to step into a memory she could call her own. The car sat in the driveway, its trunk stuffed to bursting, the engine humming softly under the morning sun. Emily adjusted her scarf, her smile bright with anticipation, but Michael's hand on her shoulder stopped her cold. His eyes, usually crinkled with charm, were flat, unyielding. "There's no room in the car, Em," he said, his voice clipped, as if stating an indisputable fact. "You can come next time." The words landed like a slap, sharp and disorienting. She blinked, searching his face for a trace of jest, but found only a wall of indifference. Before she could respond, Ethan, lanky and impatient, leaned out from the passenger seat. "Mom, you're not exactly young anymore. It's a long drive, and you'll just whine about your back again." His tone was casual, almost bored, but it cut deeper than Michael's dismissal. Sophie, her daughter, offered no words at all. She brushed past Emily, her ponytail swinging, and slid into the back seat without a glance. The car door slammed, a punctuation mark to Emily's exclusion. She stood rooted to the porch, the suitcases she'd packed now a mocking monument to her naivety. The engine roared, and the car pulled away, tires crunching over gravel, leaving her in a cloud of dust that stung her eyes. Or perhaps it was tears. She pressed a hand to her chest, where a hollow ache bloomed, and whispered to the empty air. They didn't even look back. The house loomed behind her, its familiar creaks and shadows suddenly alien, as if it, too, had turned its back on her. By the next morning, Emily's shock had curdled into something sharper. She sat at the kitchen table, the chipped ceramic mug of coffee growing cold in her hands. Her phone, an old model with a cracked screen, buzzed with a notification. A social media post from Michael. Her thumb hovered, then tapped. The image loaded slowly, each pixel a fresh wound. Michael, Ethan, and Sophie, their faces alight with joy, posing against a backdrop of rolling hills. And beside them, Laura Mitchell, Michael's old college friend, her auburn hair catching the sunlight, her smile too familiar, too intimate. Emily's breath caught, her fingers tightening around the phone until her knuckles whitened. "Laura," she muttered, the name bitter on her tongue. "Not me." The photo was a revelation, a cruel mirror reflecting truths Emily had been too busy to see. She scrolled through Michael's profile, her heart pounding as she uncovered more images. Laura at a beach with Ethan, Laura at a festival with Sophie, Laura everywhere Emily should have been. Her mind churned, dragging up memories she'd buried under years of toil. 2 Thanksgivings ago, she'd begged for a family photo, imagining them all on the couch, laughing. Michael had waved it off, too much hassle, Ethan had smirked. Nobody does those cheesy portraits anymore. Sophie had just shrugged. Now, Emily saw the lie in their excuses. They hadn't wanted her in the frame. They'd been taking those cheesy photos all along, just with Laura. She rose from the table, her movements jerky, and stepped onto the balcony. The small town stretched below, its rooftops bathed in the soft glow of late morning. She adjusted her reading glasses, a habit when her thoughts grew heavy, and stared again at the photo. Michael's arm around Laura's shoulder, Ethan's grin, Sophie's ease. They looked like a family. A family that wasn't hers. Her chest tightened, not with sadness now, but with a spark of something fiercer. Betrayal, yes, but also clarity. She had spent years tethered to Margaret's bedside, washing soiled linens while they roamed the country, living lives she'd only dreamed of. And they'd left her behind, not just this time, but countless times before. Emily's gaze drifted to the living room, where a small wooden box sat on the mantel, her collection of keepsakes from Michael. A scarf, a chipped seashell, dried flowers he'd given her with promises of forever. She'd cherished them once, tokens of a love she thought was mutual. Now, they seemed like bribes, cheap trinkets to keep her placated. She thought of Laura's scarf in the photo, its designer logo gleaming, worth more than Emily's entire wardrobe. The comparison stung, but it also ignited something within her. She turned from the balcony, her steps purposeful, and re-entered the house. The emptiness of the space mirrored the void in her heart, but it also whispered of possibility. She wasn't done yet. Her phone trembled in her hand as she dialed Michael's number. He answered after several rings, his voice low and impatient. "Make it quick, Em." No warmth, no trace of the man who once called her his anchor. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "So, no room for me in the car, but plenty for Laura." Silence stretched, a beat too long, before he stammered, "Laura she was coming along. She's a friend, Em. She helped book the hotel." "What, you jealous now?" His defensiveness was a confession, and Emily's laugh was sharp, bitter. Out of all the hotels in the world, only Laura could book one? "I could have done that, Michael." Or was it special? Softer sheets, maybe. A faint voice called his name in the background, Laura's, unmistakable. He brushed her off. "Stop with the nonsense. Don't spread rumors. Laura's just a friend. You'll come next time, all right?" Then he hung up. Emily stood in the center of the living room, the phone still warm in her palm. The walls, adorned with faded family photos, seemed to mock her. She thought of Margaret, whose care had consumed her life, and Michael's excuses. "I'm a man, Em. It's not appropriate for me to do that." She'd accepted it, shouldered the burden alone, while he and the kids gallivanted across states. Her sacrifices had been invisible, her presence expendable. But no more. She lifted her chin, her eyes blazing with resolve. Laura's presence wasn't a coincidence, it was a pattern, one she'd been too exhausted to notice. She opened her laptop, her fingers flying over the keys as she searched for Laura's social media. The truth was out there, and Emily was done being the fool. The glow of Emily Carter's laptop screen cast jagged shadows across the dining room, where the air smelled faintly of stale bread and wax polish. Her fingers, still rough from years of scrubbing, hovered over the keyboard as she scrolled through Laura Mitchell's social media. Each photo was a dagger, Laura and Michael laughing at a vineyard, Laura and Ethan posing by a lake, Sophie's arms slung casually around Laura's shoulders at a city festival. The timestamp stretched back years, a secret history Emily had been too buried in duty to uncover. Her breath hitched, not from sorrow but from a dawning fury that pulsed like a second heartbeat. She leaned back in the creaking chair, her gaze drifting to the window where the town streetlights flickered like distant stars. "How long?" she whispered to the empty room, her voice a mix of wonder and venom. "How long have I been their ghost?" Her mind rewound to a different Emily, one who existed before the weight of marriage and motherhood pressed her into a shape she no longer recognized. She'd been a force in her youth, a girl with eyes like storm clouds and a mind sharper than the town's gossip. Raised by a single mother who toiled at a greasy diner, Emily had clawed her way to the top of her high school class, her report cards a defiant middle finger to the world's low expectations. College beckoned, a scholarship secured, her future a canvas of possibility. She remembered the night she'd walked home from the library, her books clutched tight, only to be shadowed by 3 local thugs. Fear hadn't paralyzed her. She'd grabbed a broken branch and swung until they fled, their curses echoing in the dark. But the town spun a different tale, too aggressive, too wild, no man would want her. Her mother's worried sighs still echoed. "Who'll marry you now, Em?" Emily had shrugged it off, defiant, but the whispers had left scars. Michael Carter had been her salvation, or so she thought. A college boy with a disarming smile, he'd slipped a love letter into her hand at the town's bustling cafe, his bold affection silencing the rumor mill. This girl is worthy, his actions proclaimed, and Emily, heart soaring, had believed him. She married him, trading her dreams for his. While he studied, she sewed dresses late into the night, her needle pricking her fingers as she sent him crisp shirts and polished shoes. When he landed his first job, she ran their household, raised Ethan and Sophie, and cared for his parents, her own ambitions folded away like winter clothes. Now, staring at Laura's curated life, Emily saw the truth. Michael hadn't saved her. He'd tethered her, and she'd mistaken the rope for love. The dining room's silence pressed against her, broken only by the distant hum of a neighbor's lawnmower. Emily's thoughts turned to Ethan and Sophie, her children, whose indifference stung sharper than Michael's betrayal. She'd poured herself into them, bandaging scraped knees, cheering at soccer games, staying up late to help with homework. Yet, somewhere along the way, they drifted into Michael's orbit, their loyalty shifting to the father who brought gifts and stories of adventure. Emily recalled a moment from Ethan's 16th birthday, when she'd baked his favorite chocolate cake, only for him to mutter, "Dad's taking us to the arcade later." "It's cooler," Sophie, always quieter, had once clung to her, but now her daughter's eyes held a cool detachment, as if Emily were a fixture, not a person. Their dismissal wasn't malice, she realized, it was worse. It was apathy. Laura's photos revealed more than infidelity, they exposed a family that had rewritten Emily out of its narrative. A memory surfaced, unbidden, a summer evening when Michael returned from a trip, his suitcase brimming with tales of coastal cliffs and bustling markets. Emily had listened, rapt, as she ironed his shirts, her hands moving mechanically while her heart yearned to see those places. He'd handed her a small ceramic bird, its paint chipped, and said, "For you, Em. This family couldn't function without you," she'd blushed, her rural upbringing making her soft for his rare sweetness. Now, she saw the bird on the shelf, its chipped beak a mocking symbol of her gullibility. Laura's scarf, emblazoned with a luxury logo, flashed in her mind, a stark contrast to Emily's trinkets, a reminder of the life Michael had built without her. Emily stood, her movements sharp, and paced the room. The hardwood floor groaned under her steps, each creak a protest against years of neglect. She thought of Michael's excuses for leaving her with Margaret. "It's not a man's job, Em." She'd accepted it, her love blinding her to his cowardice. But now, her love was a husk, and in its place grew a resolve as hard as the oak table before her. She opened Laura's profile again, her eyes narrowing at a photo from 2 years ago, Michael and Laura at a canyon, their faces glowing with a shared awe Emily had never been offered. The caption read, "Kindred spirits exploring the world, kindred spirits." The phrase burned, a match struck in the dark of her mind. She'd been their anchor, their servant, while they chased horizons with Laura. Her phone buzzed, a message from Sophie, "Mom, can you grab some juice for when we're back?" THX, the casual demand ignited something primal in Emily. She imagined Sophie typing it, sprawled in a hotel room, Laura laughing nearby. Her fingers twitched, tempted to hurl the phone against the wall, but she paused. Destruction was too easy. She needed something sharper, something that would cut through their complacency. Her gaze fell on Michael's study door, where his prized book collection lay, signed first editions, handwritten journals, novels he flaunted like trophies. A slow, cold smile curved her lips. Those books were his heart, and she'd rip it out, not with fire, but with precision. She crossed to the study, the door's brass knob cool under her palm. Inside, the air was thick with the musty scent of old paper and leather. Shelves loomed, each volume meticulously arranged, a testament to Michael's vanity. Emily's heart raced, not with guilt but with a strange exhilaration. She ran a finger along the spine, her mind churning. Tearing them apart would be satisfying, but fleeting. Instead, an idea took root, bold and irreversible. She'd give them away, let strangers cherish what Michael hoarded. The local library, run by an old friend, would be perfect. She could already imagine Michael's face, his smug intellect crumbling when he found his shelves bare. Emily's reflection caught in the study's window, her face lined but fierce. She thought of her mother, who'd worked herself to the bone for Emily's future, only for Emily to trade it for Michael's promises. "You're tougher than anyone, Em," her mother had said once, her voice weary but proud. That toughness had been buried, but it wasn't gone. Emily straightened, her shoulders squaring as if shrugging off a decade's weight. She dialed the library, her voice steady as she spoke to her friend. "I've got some books to donate. Rare ones. Can you take them?" His eager agreement was a spark, fueling her resolve. She hung up, her eyes blazing. This was no longer about Michael or Laura or even her children. This was about Emily, and she was done being invisible. The library smelled of dust and dreams, its shelves sagging under the weight of countless stories. Emily Carter stood at the counter, her suitcase bulging with Michael's literary treasures, first editions, signed novels, journals scrawled with his pretentious musings. Her old friend, Thomas, peered over his glasses, his fingers trembling as he lifted a leather-bound classic. "Emily, these are extraordinary," he stammered, his voice hushed with reverence. "Are you sure you want to part with them?" She nodded, her smile sharp as a blade. "Michael's found finer pursuits," she said coolly. "These are just relics now. Let them find readers who will actually care." Thomas's eyes widened, sensing the steel beneath her words, but he didn't press. Emily's heart thrummed, not with regret but with a fierce exhilaration. This wasn't destruction, it was liberation, a deliberate severing of the chains that had bound her to Michael's ego. Outside, the town's main street buzzed with midday life, shopkeepers sweeping sidewalks, children chasing a stray dog, the air tinged with the scent of fresh bread from the bakery. Emily dragged the empty suitcase behind her, its wheels rattling over uneven pavement. She felt lighter, as if she'd shed a skin. Her mind churned with a daring plan, one that would have seemed unthinkable a week ago. She'd go to Chicago, a city she'd only glimpsed in Michael's postcards, a place untainted by her family's betrayal. The idea sparked a reckless joy, but also a flicker of fear. She'd never traveled alone, never strayed far from the town's familiar confines. Yet, as she passed the diner where her mother once worked, its faded sign creaking in the breeze, she heard her mother's voice. "You're tougher than anyone, Em." She straightened, her resolve hardening like clay in a kiln. Back home, Emily sat at the kitchen table, the laptop's glow illuminating her face. She opened Michael's credit card account, her fingers hesitating only a moment before booking a train ticket to Chicago. The cost made her stomach lurch. Decades of penny pinching had wired her to flinch at such expenses. But then she thought of Laura's designer scarf, the lavish hotels Michael and the kids enjoyed while she haggled over vegetables at the market. Her jaw tightened. "Half of this is mine," she murmured, clicking confirm. She chose a hotel that looked indulgent, its website boasting plush beds and marble floors. The decision felt like a rebellion, a reclaiming of the luxuries she'd been denied. She packed a small bag, her movements deliberate, each item a declaration, a soft sweater for comfort, a notebook to capture her thoughts, a single photo of her younger self, smiling fiercely. The train station was a flurry of motion, its platform slick with morning dew. Emily clutched her ticket, the paper crinkling in her grip. The train's whistle pierced the air, and she boarded, her heart pounding as she sank into a cushioned seat. The world outside blurred, fields giving way to suburbs, then the jagged skyline of Chicago. She pressed her forehead to the cool window, her reflection ghostly against the glass. Who am I now? She wondered. Not the wife who ironed Michael's shirts, nor the mother who baked Ethan's cakes. She was something new, unformed but alive. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying, like stepping onto a tightrope without a net. Chicago greeted her with a cacophony of horns and chatter, its streets pulsing with a vibrancy that made her small town feel like a faded photograph. The hotel lobby was a revelation, a chandelier glittered overhead, casting prisms across polished floors that reflected her hesitant steps. The receptionist, a young woman with a warm smile, handed her a keycard. "Welcome, Miss Carter," she said, her kindness disarming. Emily's room was a haven of soft linens and muted golds, the bed so inviting she sank onto it, her body exhaling years of tension. She laughed, a sound both giddy and brittle. This was how Michael and Laura lived, wrapped in comfort, their worries smoothed by money she'd helped earn. The realization stung, but it also fueled her. She wouldn't just mimic their life, she'd claim one better, one that was hers alone. Her first day in Chicago was a tapestry of discovery. She wandered Millennium Park, the bean's mirrored surface reflecting her solitary figure among crowds. At the Art Institute, she lingered before paintings that seemed to whisper secrets of resilience. She savored a deep-dish pizza at a cozy restaurant, each bite a defiance of her frugal past. Yet, beneath her newfound freedom, a shadow lingered. She thought of Ethan and Sophie, their silence louder than any argument. Did they even notice she was gone? Her phone buzzed, a text from Ethan, "Mom, where's Dad's books? Did you move them?" Her lips curled into a smirk. They'd noticed, all right. She typed back, "Ask your father." "I'm busy," the reply was a small victory, a refusal to be their servant any longer. Emily's exploration wasn't just physical, it was a journey inward. At a lakeside cafe, she sipped coffee, watching waves lap against the shore. She remembered her mother's hands, rough from years of washing dishes, and how she'd urged Emily to seize her own path. Emily had chosen Michael instead, believing his love was her destiny. Now, she saw her choice for what it was, a surrender. But surrender wasn't permanent. She opened her notebook, her pen scratching out a list: visit the Grand Canyon. Learn to paint. Live for me. Each word was a brick in a new foundation, a life she'd build without permission from Michael or the kids. Back at the hotel, another message waited, this time from Sophie. "Mom, were you using Dad's card?" "That's for my apartment stuff." "Be careful," the accusation stung, but Emily's response was swift, her fingers flying. "Half that money's mine, Sophie. I'm alive, and I'll spend it how I want. Ask your father why he's funding Laura's vacations instead of your apartment." She hit send, her pulse racing. Sophie's silence was telling, she knew more than she'd let on. Emily leaned back, the city's hum filtering through the window. Michael's books were gone, her chains loosening, but the fight was far from over. She wasn't just running away, she was running towards something, a self she'd buried long ago, now clawing its way to the surface. Meanwhile, in a hotel room far from Chicago, Michael's unease grew. He dismissed Emily's absence as a tantrum, but Ethan's frantic call about the books unsettled him. She wouldn't, he muttered, pacing the plush carpet. Laura, lounging on the bed, raised an eyebrow. Wouldn't what? Throw a fit? She's your wife, Michael, not a saint. Her tone was light, but her eyes held a flicker of worry. Ethan and Sophie, sprawled on the couch, exchanged glances. They'd always seen their mother as a constant, a backdrop to their lives. Now, her absence was a crack in their world, and they weren't sure who to blame. Michael's jaw tightened. She'll come around, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Emily's rebellion was a spark, and none of them knew how fiercely it would burn. The Carter home was a battlefield of shadows when Michael returned, 2 days earlier than planned. The living room, once a sanctuary of routine, now thrummed with tension, its air thick with the scent of polished wood and unspoken truths. Emily stood by the window, her silhouette framed against the dusk, her posture unyielding as granite. She'd returned from Chicago that morning, her skin still tingling with the city's pulse, her resolve sharpened by days of freedom. The front door groaned open, and Michael stepped in, followed by Ethan, Sophie, and, unmistakably, Laura Mitchell. Their laughter died as they met Emily's gaze, her eyes glinting like polished steel. She didn't move, didn't speak, letting the silence coil around them like a noose. Inside, her heart roared, "This ends now." Michael broke the quiet, his voice a forced blend of warmth and irritation. You're back. Good. We need to clear up this misunderstanding," he gestured vaguely, as if her pain were a trivial knot to untangle. Laura, poised on the threshold, offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just a coincidence, Jody," she said, her tone syrupy, as if soothing a child. "I ran into them on the trip." No need for drama. Emily's laugh was a low, bitter thing, slicing through the pretense. "A coincidence," she said, her voice steady but laced with venom. "Every few months, Laura, you just happen to join my family's vacations. Funny how I'm the only one never invited." She stepped forward, her presence filling the room, and Laura's smile faltered, a crack in her polished facade. Ethan, slouched against the wall, piped up, his tone defensive. "Mom, you're blowing this out of proportion. Aunt Laura's just Dad's friend. She got us a deal on the hotel." His use of aunt was a barb, and Emily's eyes narrowed. She turned to him, her son, whose boyish face now carried a hardness she hadn't noticed before. "A deal," she repeated, her words slow, deliberate. "And what am I, Ethan? Your maid? The woman who washes your clothes while you play family with her." She gestured at Laura, who stiffened, her fingers tightening around her purse. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed, his bravado wilting under her gaze. Sophie, meanwhile, kicked off her shoes and headed for the fridge, only to spin around when she found it bare. "Mom, seriously? No juice?" "I texted you." Her petulance was a spark in Emily's kindling rage. Emily's voice dropped, cold and precise. "If you're replacing me, Sophie, take your time. Pick someone who'll stock your fridge and bow to your whims." "But I'm done." She turned to Laura, who'd settled onto the couch, her posture too comfortable in Emily's space. Emily picked up a throw pillow she'd sewn years ago, brushing it as if Laura's presence had tainted it. "Some people crave steak in their youth and settle for scraps later," she said, her eyes locked on Laura's. "Tastes change, don't they? Or is it just that some appetites are filthier than others?" Laura's face tightened, her voice sharpening. "What are you implying, Emily? Throwing around accusations with no proof? No wonder your reputation was a mess back in town." She leaned forward, her words a calculated jab. "Dave always said you were kind." He was wrong. The room froze, the air brittle. Sophie rolled her eyes and stomped to her room, dismissing the clash as beneath her. Ethan, however, surged forward, his face flushed. "Mom, that's enough. How dare you talk to Aunt Laura like that? She came to fix this mess you're making. Emily's hand moved before she could think, the slap echoing like a thunderclap. Ethan clutched his cheek, eyes wide with shock. You hit me, he whispered, more stunned than hurt. And I'll do it again if you lie to me, Emily said, her voice trembling with fury. She grabbed a stack of printed photos from the table, evidence of Laura's recurring presence on their trips, and flung them at him. Explain this, Ethan. Every vacation, she's there. My son, so loyal to someone else's mother, but I'm just your servant, aren't I? Ethan shrank back, the photos fluttering to the floor, his silence a confession. Laura's composure cracked, her voice icy. And what do these prove? We're travel companions, Emily. Do you think you could ever connect with Michael like I do? Stand at the Grand Canyon and feel its majesty, she smirked, her words dripping with condescension. You don't belong in his world. Be grateful he married you, given your past. Emily's laugh was soft, dangerous. She touched her face, feeling the lines etched by years of sacrifice. Superior, Laura? We took the same exam, didn't we? My score was higher. I got into university but chose not to go. You? 3 tries for a second-rate college. Laura's face twitched, her mask slipping, but she quickly smoothed it over. Emily's victory was fleeting, for Michael's voice cut through, heavy with scorn. When did you become so bitter, Em? Humiliating Laura because you threw away your chance at college? You chose to be a failure. Emily set her coffee mug down with deliberate care, the ceramic clinking against the table. She turned to face him, her gaze ablade. Failure, she said, her voice low, lethal. I scored higher than you, Michael. I missed my college deadline because I was cleaning up after you. I paid for your tuition when your mother ran off. I sewed clothes to keep you in those fancy shirts. I raised our kids while you played intellectual. And you call me a failure? Michael's face reddened, his fists clenching, but Emily stepped closer, undaunted. You owe me everything, and now you dare stand here with her? Laura placed a hand on Michael's arm, her expression fragile, but Emily saw the calculation in her eyes. Ethan, silent now, looked between them, his loyalty wavering. Emily's voice rose, steady and resolute. I want a divorce. The words landed like a guillotine, severing the room's pretense. Laura gasped, her composure shattering. No, you can't, she cried, her voice frantic. What does that make me? This'll ruin my reputation. Her panic betrayed her, revealing a stake deeper than friendship. Michael, unmoved, held her hand, his expression smug. You sure, Em? He said, almost amused. You're nothing without me. Who'll hire you? Who'll support you? Emily's chuckle was slow, cold. Support me? I cared for your mother 16 years, $2,000 a month, minimum, for a nurse. I raised our kids on seamstress wages while you earned pennies. You owe me, Michael. She pulled divorce papers from her bag, sliding them across the table. Sign. We're done tomorrow. Michael's eyes scanned the terms, his smirk twisting into a sneer. He tore the papers to shreds, the pieces fluttering like ash. Half my assets? Dream on. I'll give you 15 grand. Take it or leave with nothing. Emily's smile was serene, dangerous. You're choosing the hard way, Michael. Remember that. She grabbed her bag, her steps echoing as she headed for the door. Michael's voice chased her, mocking. Where do you think you're going, Em? The house isn't even clean. She didn't turn back, her reply a whip crack in the dark. Go to hell. Michael outside, the night air was crisp, the stars sharp above the town's sleepy rooftops. Emily's chest heaved, not with fear but with a wild, untamed freedom. She'd lit the fuse, now, she'd watch it burn. The coastal town of Havenridge greeted Emily Carter with the briny tang of sea air and the rhythmic crash of waves against weathered cliffs. She'd arrived a month after leaving Michael, her heart still raw but her spirit unbowed, renting a modest room in a senior living community where gulls wheeled overhead and salt clung to the windows. The room was simple, whitewashed walls, a quilted bed, a desk by a window overlooking the ocean, but to Emily, it was a canvas, blank and hers to paint. She stood at that window now, her fingers tracing the grain of the sill, her reflection softened by morning light. Chicago had been a spark, Havenridge was the fire. She was no longer the woman who'd scrubbed floors for a family that forgot her. She was Emily, and for the first time, that was enough. The divorce had been a war, waged over a year in courtrooms that smelled of polish and regret. Michael, ever the strategist, had leveraged his connections to delay the process, his lawyers spinning tales of Emily's unreasonable demands, but truth was a stubborn thing, and Emily's meticulous records, years of bank statements, receipts from Michael's college wardrobe, her seamstress earnings, painted a damning picture. The judge's gavel fell, splitting their assets evenly, a verdict that left Michael's face ashen. His torn-up offer of $15,000 had been a bluff, one that cost him dearly in legal fees. Emily didn't gloat, she didn't need to. The money was hers by right, a belated acknowledgement of the life she'd poured into him. She banked it, not for extravagance, but for freedom. Havenridge's community was a tapestry of lives worn but vibrant. Emily found kinship with women whose stories mirrored her own, widows, divorcees, mothers whose children had drifted to distant shores. They gathered in the common room, its walls adorned with faded seascapes, to play cards under the hum of a ceiling fan. Laughter came easily here, as did confessions. "My son calls once a year," admitted Clara, a retired nurse, her knitting needles clicking. "I raised him, but he's a stranger now," Emily nodded, her throat tight. She thought of Ethan and Sophie, their silence a wound that hadn't fully healed. Yet, in Clara's wry smile, she saw resilience, a mirror to her own. She began mending their clothes, her needle threading stories of her past into each stitch, her hands reclaiming a craft once tied to sacrifice. Michael's fate reached her through a call from Sophie, her voice stripped of its old petulance. "Mom, Dad had a stroke," she said, the words flat, as if testing Emily's reaction. "Do you want to come see him?" "I know you probably don't, but I had to ask." Emily stood on the community's pier, the wood slick beneath her sneakers, the horizon a watercolor of pinks and blues. She pictured Michael, once so imposing, now diminished, his body betraying him as his books had. The news of his collapse, triggered by the empty shelves in his study, had come earlier from Ethan, his voice frantic, accusing. "Mom, how could you give away his life's work?" he demanded. She'd hung up, her heart unmoved. "Now, to Sophie," she replied simply, "I won't be coming." The words weren't cruel, just final. She owed him nothing. Laura's departure was no surprise. She'd tended to Michael briefly, playing the devoted friend, but his lost status, his influence eroded by scandal and stroke, was a weight she wouldn't carry. One day, she vanished, leaving no note, her absence a quiet admission of her limits. Ethan and Sophie, now navigating their own careers, had neither the time nor the will to care for him. The children who'd once leaned on his wallet found themselves unmoored, their guilt a private burden. Michael was placed in a nursing home, its sterile halls a far cry from the luxury he'd chased. Emily never visited. That chapter was a book she'd closed, its pages burned in the fire of her rebirth. Her days in Havenridge were a quiet symphony. She enrolled in a community crafts class, learning to weave baskets, the rhythm of the reeds soothing her restless mind. She set up a small stand outside the local market, offering tailoring and alterations, her sign painted in bold blues, "Emily's Stitches." The work wasn't lucrative, but each dollar was hers, earned on her terms. She traveled modestly, a train to Portland, a bus to a nearby vineyard, savoring the freedom to go where her whims led. One evening, at a seaside cafe, she met a woman named Ruth, her hair silver and her laugh infectious. Over tea, Ruth said, "A woman's heart shouldn't be chained, Emily." Not by a man, not by anyone, the words lodged in Emily's soul, a creed for her new life. The ocean became her confidant. She walked its shores daily, the sand cool between her toes, collecting shells that gleamed like promises. She thought of her mother, whose diner shifts had bought Emily's education, only for her to trade it for Michael's vows. "You're tougher than anyone," her mother had said, and Emily felt that toughness now, tempered by wisdom. She didn't hate Michael or the kids, she pitied them, their lives tangled in their own choices. Ethan's calls had stopped, his anger spent. Sophie, though, reached out years later, her voice softer, stripped of entitlement. "Mom, would you come stay with me?" she asked, hesitating. "I didn't get it back then, how much you did. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to try." Emily stood by the pier, the wind tugging at her hand-sewn jacket, the waves a steady pulse. She didn't answer immediately. Sophie's words stirred memories, of her daughter's childhood hugs, her whispered, "I love you, Mommy," but they also stirred truth. Emily had raised Sophie, yet Sophie had chosen Michael's side until it crumbled. Forgiveness wasn't a debt Emily owed, but neither was resentment a burden she'd carry. "Let me explore the world first," she said finally, her tone light but firm. "Then I'll think about it." She ended the call, slipping her phone into her pocket. The fishing boats bobbed on the horizon, their lights winking like stars. Emily smiled, her heart unchained, her life a horizon stretching wide. As the sun dipped below the sea, painting the sky in hues of amber and violet, Emily sipped coffee from a chipped mug, its warmth seeping into her hands. She thought of the girl she'd been, fierce, unyielding, dreaming of a world beyond her town's gossip. That girl hadn't died, she'd merely slept, waiting for Emily to wake her. Now, she was awake, her life a tapestry of her own weaving. She joined her friends at the pier, their laughter rising over the waves, and watched the boats come in. The world was vast, and she was only beginning. Why would she stop now?